Are you sick of sacrificing flavor just to eat healthy or lose a little bit of weight? Well, you don't have to. You can stay true to the flavors of your culture and you can still find healthy tweaks.
I hate, despise, loathe broccoli. It is like my arch enemy.
I have a lot of patients who will eat fast food, let's say 10 times a week.
So my family is Creole. I am used to a lot of foods that are not the most healthiest.
We still gotta have Thanksgiving, we still gotta have Christmas. How do we stay healthy but still eat well? Today I have with me two docs. The first is Dr. Tiffany Bell, who practices adult and child psychiatry and also obesity medicine, and Dr. Tyree M.S. Winters, who's a board certified osteopathic pediatrician, and he also has a special interest in helping youth combat obesity. Thank you for joining me today, guys. All right. So, what is your advice when a patient is ready to eat healthy? It's a new year, I've made all these resolutions, but they just don't like the taste of healthy foods?
So for me, especially working with children, my first thought is Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is going to be a healthy diet. So let's take things one at a time. Because a lot of times when I have patients who are very enthusiastic about wanting to start a healthy diet, I have to really guide them to try to be more reasonable and to start off slow and then build up.
That's awesome. I actually do something really similar because I have a lot of patients who will eat fast food, let's say 10 times a week. And so we start off really small. Can you eat maybe just one meal a day at fast food, which for some people sounds like a lot, and some it's like, oh, that's breakfast, or that's lunch on the way from work. And so I'll tell them, switch out your chicken nuggets. I won't plug any places, but they have grilled nuggets at some places. You can get fruit instead of fries. So it's really the small things, and you can have a little flavor. If you're going to have fries, don't also have the fried chicken sandwich. So they're just the little tweaks you can make.
So, what about getting the family on board though? Because you can make a decision for yourself, but then you go home and you try to cook all these new recipes, and your family's like, Black, what is this? What is this mess you're making us eat?
The interesting thing is that we have working with pediatrics, and both me and Dr. Bell both work obviously with pediatric patients, you'll find that it's not uncommon to have a mismatch where the child may be ready, but the family isn't, or the family may be ready, but the child isn't. And so when I have that situation occur, I always, one, encourage everyone to get involved. Most times you will find that doing small, simple things, for instance, kind of how Dr. Bell had stated with switching out the fried nuggets for chicken nuggets, I talk a lot about cooking together as a family, and I find that that's usually a way to do two things. One, to build that family dynamic that we all need to have. And unfortunately, even though we have a horrible pandemic going on right now, it has lended itself to seeing more families be together and being able to cook together. And so being able to use that time to be able to cook, you will find that you can substitute things that can be healthier. So say for instance, air fryers is the big latest and greatest things. But what happens if you can't afford an air fryer, right? Then there's other ways that you can do it. You can actually make your own fried nuggets if you want to without having to put a batter or a coating over those fried nuggets. You're actually saving on some of those extra calories.
I agree with that as well. Also, you can, sometimes I will tell people to let your family pick the vegetable of the day because, for instance, I love broccoli, and I'm lucky that my kids like broccoli too. But if you wanted to give me asparagus, I might not want to eat that as much. So a lot of times you can go to the grocery store back when that was safe, or if you're going to order online, And you can just kind of say, well, what vegetable can we eat today? And if the kids like corn and you're okay with it, then let them pick the corn and make a meal that includes the corn. Because the point is to get everybody involved and make it so that it's not a force, like you've got to eat healthy because I'm eating healthy. Really, everybody's just trying to feel better. And so it's good to swing it that way and not like we're on a diet.
I hate, despise, loathe broccoli. It is like my arch enemy.
I love
However,
it.
I hate it. I hate it with a pure, unadulterated hatred. However, it was my mother's favorite vegetable. And
Wow.
so she cooked it all the time, even though she knew I hated it.
Hmm.
And so I use this because I use the example of myself when I talk to a family and I say, like, here's the deal. If you try a food, and this is actually scientifically proven, if you try food 23 times in 23 different unique times, and you realize you didn't like it, then chances are it's not for you. It's not hidden for you. So I usually make a deal with families and I make a deal with the kids. And I say, like, look, if you know you don't like a certain fruit or vegetable, if there's a fruit or a vegetable mostly, that you know that the child will eat, I'm not saying that they have to love it, but they will eat it, then here is the agreement that we make. Hey, if mommy or daddy tell you that they will make the vegetable that you're willing to eat, you have to promise that you will try to eat that vegetable. And they won't try to force you to eat a different vegetable. Now, everyone knows who have kids that eventually you may get tired of that vegetable. You'll be like, I want to try something different. And it lends to you opening up and being less kind of stubborn or less in a way try not to, you open up to having different experiences and different tastes.
I also know some very clever parents who hide the vegetables. And that's not just for the children, for the adults too. So because they don't like the taste of them, they will put them inside of a meatball, for example, like cut up the like the leaves, so to speak, of the broccoli and grind them in with the meatball so that you're not tasting that broccoli taste so much, or maybe some other type of vegetable. So I think the key also is to be creative. Like don't just take this vegetable when you know you don't like vegetables and just like steam them or microwave them and think that you're going to pop them in your mouth and you're just going to be healthy all of a sudden. Like you need to do something that's sustainable and you need to flavor them in a way that is sustainable. I'll just throw in real quick for myself. I've started roasting vegetables, which I didn't do before, probably mostly just because of time. And the flavor that comes out in the vegetables when you roast them, and by roasting, I mean literally just tossing them in a little olive oil, maybe a little salt and pepper, and then spreading them out on a baking sheet and just sticking them in the oven. That's it, like barely doing anything to them. And I do like broccoli. So like broccoli tastes really good roasted, carrots taste really good roast. They actually get sweeter almost when you do
Onions,
that.
yeah.
So I that's my contribution is I've just started doing that more lately just because I've been eating so many fruits and vegetables and I'm starting to get a little bored. And that's my new thing now. So, you just got to get creative.
And I wanted to add about hiding vegetables. You can also do that really well with smoothies. So, you can have your fruit, that's the sweetness of it, and then throw in some spinach. And honestly, it doesn't have to turn into a green smoothie. Sometimes I do it and you can barely tell there's any spinach in there at all, but you're still getting the vitamins and it still helps a little bit with the health. And you don't have to add any sugar. So it's tasty.
And here's another thing that I wanted to warn people about, because you can read a lot of different articles and a lot of different blogs that'll tell you like, oh, don't blend the vegetables, don't try to hide them because you're going to take away the fact of a lot of the nutrients that we garner from actually mastification, so actually chewing the vegetables, actually going through that process of digesting it. And it's true, there is truth into that. But here's the other thing as well. No one is perfect. No situation is perfect. Okay. So get that out of your mind. Try not to always listen to like, I have to have everything. Because if truth be told, the only thing that's not going to cause for you to have any death or cancer or blah, 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 is going to be like water at some point in time. I mean, that's unsustainable in life. But I would also say too, when you're thinking about that, and when you talked about how roasting the vegetables gave you a different flavor, I found that when you cook with your children and you have them taste along the way, obviously things that they can taste that are not raw and could potentially cause for you to become sick, vegetables is one of those things. After you clean it, you're able to eat it raw, you're able to eat it cooked. Having them try those things throughout different periods, I did not like, and I still am not a big fan of cooked carrots, but I love raw carrots. My mom typically boiled the carrots. Once I tasted raw carrots, I was like, my God, these are so good. And I always thought I didn't like carrots. It was just I didn't like the actual preparation. So actually cooking with your family, have them try foods along the way. You'll be surprised that they may like raw onions instead of cooked onions, vice versa.
That is a good point. And I think, so it sounds like, be open, especially if you make it to adulthood, kind of avoiding something, it may be worth a shot at trying it again, just to see in a different form, maybe not the way that you disliked it before. So I want to take a second to share with the audience some of our personal tips and tricks for keeping flavor, right? Throughout the diaspora, we have lots of different cultures, from actually, the continent of Africa all the way to the different islands, to the South, different, parts of the US. And how can folks keep that flavor? I mean, we still got to have Thanksgiving, we still got to have Christmas. How do we stay healthy but still eat well?
Yeah. So I would say some of it for me, I like collard greens, for instance. And when you have them, depending on who's preparing them, they taste very good, but they have the meat and they have some fats and they have things that taste good, but maybe I'm not going to eat it that way every day. And so for me, I had to accept that this might taste slightly different, but it still can taste good, right? It still can be flavorful. And so maybe we're going to use some olive oils, or we may saute things differently, which is, cooking at light heat and on the stove. And we may add some salts, and also you can do turkey bacon if you don't want to do um, ham hock or something. But often I just do them with no meat at all. So for me, the tip is I kind of go into it saying this may be good, but it may not be mama's greens or my Thanksgiving greens, but I'm still going to enjoy them. So that's something I do, kind of changing my expectation.
And for me, how I keep the flavor is, so my family is Creole. So we are from Southern Mississippi, that Louisiana, Southern Mississippi flavor. So I am used to a lot of foods that are not the most healthiest. However, I try to make it healthy by sticking to some of the principles that we all know. So one of the principles is the healthy plate, right? And I really take the healthy plate to heart when I talk about how I prepare my foods and how I want my patients to try to prepare their foods. When you think about the healthy plate, half of that plate should be fruit and vegetable. The other half should be divided between the meat and the starch. So if I'm going to make something like gumbo, for instance, and I'm used to making homemade gumbo from scratch, when I do, I make sure that I add in tons more of the Trinity vegetables. So those are your onions, your green peppers, your celery. That helps to thicken that roux or the gravy that people know of. And then also I can add things like corn if I wanted to. I can add things like carrots, things that are traditionally not part of gumbo. So for all of my true Creole folks out there, I know that ain't part of the gumbo. However, it is things that you can add. And that also helps me to still feel full without adding as much of the andouille sausage and much the chicken or seafood. If you want to add seafood, you can also limit also the rice. So it allows for you to still have that flavor because those are traditional vegetables that we're going to put in. And it's also helping me to not add as much salt to it.
Mhm.
So I try to cook things before without adding any salt. So then after the vegetables, after even some of the meats get into it, that also have its own salt that carries along with it. We know andouille sausage is not the best. It's usually more salty. So I usually use a turkey sausage, but it still has tons of salt in it. So if you add those in, cook that, and then taste it, you may find you don't have to use as much salt as you thought you initially did when you were making, like, say, for instance, the roux or the broth.
And I find that if you season with more, actual seasonings and herbs, then you may not need as much salt anyway, because a lot of times you're missing flavor. And so you say, okay, grab the salt shaker, salted pepper. It didn't even taste the food yet. It might actually be okay. And so if you're seasoning it and kind of waiting to see what it tastes like, then add salt, you may end up with less. So that's good.
No, those are both great ideas. So let's talk for a quick second about salt. So should everybody be avoiding salt? Is it just for certain folks? How does one know I need to cut back on sugar, I need to cut back on carbs, I need to cut back on salt? What are you advising folks right now?
I'm a big person on what's good for the goose is good for the gander, in the sense of even if you don't have issues along the way when it comes to hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, you don't want to get to those problems anyway. You want to be able to try to limit the intake that you're going to have to prevent those preventable chronic illnesses. So why start off with it? So just the same way Dr. Bell said, adding salt in later after you actually taste the food, because Lord knows we all saw people who can dump tons of salt and dump tons of sugar into something that butter that you just like, look, you didn't even taste the food yet. You ain't taste my grits yet. You ain't know that I didn't add the butter in or not. Just don't do that to me. But anyway,
That sounds personal.
It's like, I'm offended. How dare you?
exactly. But it is. But no, seriously, I definitely say to make sure that, like, things like salt, that you try to limit those things. When you think about what we need total for our sodium content, you will be surprised. Those back of the packages that talks about the sodium daily value or daily content that you need, it's actually a pretty decent model, but it's a model built on an adult male. So if you're thinking about something for like a child, or you're thinking about something for like a petite woman, it may not necessarily be your daily intake. It may be less. But at the same time, it's something where if you're just like, this is just too much, it's too much math, it's too much going on, you can use that as a guide to say, like, okay, these chips that I just picked up said it has 10% of my daily sodium content. Well, then you realize, like, wow, maybe I don't need to eat as much of that, because if I eat 10 servings, that's all the servings of sodium I'm supposed to have for that day.
The thing that's tough about sodium, though, is that it's in everything. Not everything, but it's in a lot of processed foods. Processed meaning it's in a box. It can live in the cabinet without going into the refrigerator. A lot of the ways that we preserve things in the United States is by adding sodium. So if you do fresh fruits and vegetables, or fresh meats, like, just go to the grocery store and it's still like, it's not frozen, it's not in a can, and nothing, it hasn't been breaded, those don't have sodium, or have minimal sodium. But anything that's in a package is probably going to have sodium. One of my little tricks, particularly when I'm trying to watch sugars, carbs, maybe even drop a few pounds, is the type of flour. I have learned to use almond flour now, and even coconut flour instead of regular flour, which I just couldn't believe that it really was fewer carbs and fewer grams of sugar, but it actually is. So I make keto pancakes, is what they're often called, that don't, it just uses almond flour or coconut flour with eggs, cream cheese, things like that. They actually taste good. Usually when I make them, even folks that aren't watching their carbs like them. So that's kind of my true test. And then now I've started using it like actual flour for other stuff. Like you can actually bread things with it, like meat. You can fry chicken with it. Although if you're gonna bread the chicken, you might want to add something else to it, like a Parmesan cheese or something, just to give it more oomph. That's what a friend of mine just recently told me. But there's a way that you can substitute regular oat flour with these other types of flours that can be healthier if you're trying to avoid sugars, and especially if you have diabetes.
The other tricks that I use too is speaking about salt, for instance, or sugar, it's a play on your taste buds. That's really what it is. And you have to train your taste buds to be able to decipher things that you thought you needed. So usually with sodium, sodium is more of a savory, or salt is more of a savory taste bud. Sugar is more of a sweet taste bud. So if you're thinking about things that are more savory, acidic flavorings can make a huge difference, i.e. things like lemon, vinegar, that gives you that same kind of salty kind of flavor, but it takes away that sodium content. So it's actually more helpful. You realize this when you eat things like Italian dressing, if you eat Italian dressing, right? So Italian dressing is usually a vinegar and an oil. And when you usually will use it, if you taste it, it almost tastes a little bit salty. It's the same thing like if you taste like vinegar, straight up vinegar, it tastes a little salty to you. I try to use those things to substitute for it. I also, for sugar things, instead of using more of a sugar substitute like Splenda or stevia or something along those lines, which are not always the best. I think it's a great substitution if you are trying to substitute, but large quantities of ingestion of it is not the best. We know this from research. So what I try to do is do things that are naturally sweet that may not have the full on high carbohydrate content that a white refined sugar may have. So those are things like using light brown sugar, I find can sometimes be a little bit helpful. Agave, honey, even trying to use some of the vegetables, or I'm sorry, not vegetables, but fruits that can sweeten things up a little bit. So like Dr. Bell alluded to with smoothies, like adding in like an apple or some berries or something along those lines to get that sweetness. But you can also think about even if you're making something that you want to add a little bit of sweetness to, you can actually chop up really fine some fruits to add to it, or even emulsify them, something like along the lines of like applesauce, right? Applesauce does wonders for baked goods.
I was just listening and I was thinking to myself, yes, because when you're making brownies or cakes, you can replace the oil with applesauce, and truly people don't even know. And you save some calories, you save some oil, and then you can have another treat. But I'm sorry to interrupt, but yes, I agree with you.
It also makes a difference what types of oils you're cooking in, right? So olive oil and coconut oil, it seems like those are better than maybe the traditional vegetable oils or even lard, like animal fats. So I don't know, if you guys had anything to add on that, but that's just another point I wanted to add. Actually, even plain butter is actually better than some of the vegetable and animal fats.
When you're thinking about fats, you also, especially like different oils, you want to think about what you're cooking with it, right? So some of the oils have a higher burn rate than the others. So if you're thinking about like, oh, I want to pan fry, so that means like you're going to fry something in a thinner amount of oil versus submerging the oil. That's usually a little bit more helpful. If you wanted to like even do something like how you said before when you're roasting the vegetables, drizzle a little bit of olive oil on it. Those are helpful. But if you're going to pan fry something, you don't want to use an oil that's going to burn a lot easier. Olive oil tends to burn so much more faster. So if you want to do something like a pan fry, like a quick saute, you don't want to use something like olive oil because it's going to burn really quickly and then you're going to burn your food. But it's great to use on other different things that you're going to use at a lower heat. And then I'm actually a fan of vegetable oil, canola oil. Those are the type of oils that I typically tend to stick to. You want oils that are not going to be more with trans fat. So when you're thinking about the different ways that fats are go along, you want to do more of a mono.
Also, if you don't have an air fryer, you can also bread things and bake them too. You can make your own chicken tenders and bread them and put them in the oven instead of frying them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a good way to air fry something really quick is to give it a quick sear on a stove and then pop it into the oven. That's a great way of doing that homemade air fryer technique that you can easily do with just your oven.
All right, well, we have a little treat today. Dr. Lauren, the culinary doctor, is going to do a demo up next. She is going to do a new twist on an old favorite. So that's Sloppy Joe's.
Yay.
When's the last time you guys had a Sloppy Joe?
It's been a while, but I'm looking forward to making one.
I want to say last year because I had some leftover turkey meat that I needed to get rid of. And I was like, you know what? I'm about to whip up some Sloppy Joes real quick.
But how did you make it? Did you just literally open up a bottle of ketchup and pour it over, over your ground meat?
No, so, you know, I don't do it that way. Well, all I do is just make like a spaghetti sauce, but I just don't put no noodles in it.
Got it. Got it. Well, let's take a look how Dr. Lauren does it. She's going to show us how to make healthy turkey Sloppy Joes.
Now, this is probably a dish you've traditionally, eaten growing up. I think I had someone tell me that they used to eat turkey Sloppy Joes, the meat out of a can, and it hurt my feelings. So I want to show you guys how to make a healthy turkey Sloppy Joe, because let's be real, it's an easy meal to make. I think kids will like it, adults will like it, but there's just not a whole lot of nutrition when it comes to just putting some meat on some bread. So let me kind of go over a way that you can make this healthy. We never want to get like a turkey Sloppy Joe mix from the grocery store out of a can because it has so much sodium and sugar in it. So I'm going to show you how to make the sauce. I'm going to just show you everything that you can make to make this dish as nutritious as possible. So let's start by going over our ingredients. So of course we're going to be using whole wheat buns. Again, we want to use bread that has some kind of nutritional value. I've got some shredded carrots, some diced tomato. That's one whole tomato, large tomato that I've diced. We've got our sauce, and I'm going to show you later how we'll make that sauce. And then I've got 1 pound of ground turkey. For my seasonings, we're going to keep it simple with some sea salt, cayenne pepper, black pepper, and some garlic powder. Super simple, super easy, and I promise you it's going to taste great. Okay, so I think one of the most important ingredients of turkey Sloppy Joes are the sauce. So let me show you how I made this sauce. It is so delicious, and I'm not even a big barbecue person, but honestly it's something that I can just dip my finger in and it tastes so good. So what you'll need is a half a cup of ketchup. Now I like the ketchup that doesn't have sugar added. It just basically is sweetened with honey. That's the one that I buy. So 1/2 cup ketchup. You'll need 1/4 cup of barbecue sauce. Same thing, we don't want one that has a bunch of sugar added. The ones that are just naturally sweetened or sweetened with honey are going to be your best. You'll need 1 teaspoon of mustard. You'll need 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. You'll need 1 teaspoon of olive oil. And then you'll need 1/2 tablespoon of red wine vinegar. I also add a little garlic powder and onion powder just for some extra flavoring. All you have to do is dump all those ingredients in a bowl and stir them up, and I promise it will be perfection. It's impossible to mess up. Okay, so let's get cooking. I've got my nice hot saucepan. I'm gonna just drizzle some olive oil in the pan to coat it. Again, we're using a very lean meat, ground turkey I'm using, but you could also use ground chicken. And because these meats are so lean, they're not going to produce a lot of fat, so you're going to have to add oil. Not what you would usually do if you were cooking like a ground beef, because that creates a whole bunch of grease and oil, but we will not be using that type of meat. We're using a leaner meat. I'm just going to season my meat with some sea salt and black pepper. You guys know I like to keep it super simple with my seasonings. And the little cayenne pepper. This adds not just heat, but it also adds flavor, so you'll notice that I use this a lot in a lot of the dishes that I cook. And we're just going to go ahead and brown this meat. Once our meat is brown, we can go ahead and add in 1 generous cup of shredded carrots, and then 1 whole tomato that's been cut. Now, I like to use carrots because carrots add a natural sweetness. In addition, once they're shredded and you put the sauce on, you really don't even notice them. And so this is just a way to add extra nutrition to a dish. It really doesn't have a whole lot of nutrition because it's literally just meat and vegetables. But once you add your vegetables, it just makes it a more complete meal. Next, go ahead and add your sauce. And we're just going to stir that and make sure everything is coated really, really well with our sauce. Again, I promise you the sauce is super delicious. And we'll just mix everything super well and make sure it's nice and coated and everything is warmed thoroughly. All right, now let's go ahead and assemble these. I've toasted my bun so it's nice and toasty, and I've added 1 slice of sharp cheddar cheese. Another type of cheese that would go well would be like a pepper jack. That would be really nice too. And then I just top my meat. I do usually do about 1.5 to 2 spoonfuls of this mixture, and you easily get 4 sloppy joes, like super, super easy. So that's it. I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Dr. Lauren. So what do you guys think about that sloppy joe that she made?
I thought it was amazing. I'm definitely going to add it to my menu this month. So thank you, Dr. Lauren.
Dr. Lauren, I love the fact that you showed an excellent way on how to be able to put more vegetables into a meal without necessarily making it into something that was like on the side, so you can easily avoid it. It's incorporated within that meal, so you'll most likely eat it and enjoy it.
That's true, because remember, carrots, they're good antioxidants. They have a lot of vitamin C, so we got to stop skipping our vegetables for sure. You can find more in Dr. Lauren's book called Food Essentials for the Busy Professional. I'll put a link to it underneath this video, as well as some links to some of the other things that we mentioned here in the video. So guys, any last thoughts?
Find something you like and do your best to add it to your menu when you're eating. And if there are things that you can go without, then cut them out when you can. Maybe you don't need that extra serving of fries, and maybe you can grab an apple on the way to work. So take it slowly, step by step.
Exactly. I was going to say, don't beat yourself up, whatever you do. We have a tendency, if we fall off, to beat ourselves up or to feel like, you know what, I'm already off the wagon. I can't get back on track again. And Donnie McClurkin, they make that song, we fall down, but we get back up again for nothing. Because that's more about our lives than you know of. So we do fall down again. Dr. Winters will fall down. Dr. Gaines will fall down. I showed you. Dr. Bell fell down. But you know what? We get back up again and we keep on trying.
Right.
That's true. And don't forget, you can still stay true to the seasonings and the flavors of home. You don't have to give those up just because you're trying to be healthy. Maybe you're not putting them on the same types of foods that you used to, or cooking in the same exact method, but you can still incorporate them into your new dishes. So don't forget about that. All right. So thank you guys for joining me today. I mean, you guys as well as the audience. Please feel free to subscribe to Black America's Health channel to get more content. We're going to keep cranking out episodes just like this. And again, if you want to hit the bell, you will get notified of future episodes. And again, all the links are underneath the video. Thank you guys. Have a good night.